Right now, the Ukrainian armed forces are entering Crimea. This is just the beginning of a major liberation operation. Russia is in panic, a historic turning point. The Kerch Bridge is in the crosshairs. The empire is in darkness. The Ukrainian armed forces have brought an energy end to Russia. Ukraine's incredibly powerful precision strikes are plunging Russia into darkness. Putin is losing the war, without light, without heat, without a chance. Russia's days of dominance at sea are numbered. The latest Ukrainian naval drones are destroying targets at a distance of 5,000 kilometers. There is panic in the Kremlin. Now, not a single occupier's ship can escape retribution anywhere. Slovakia has struck back at Putin. Bratislava is showering Ukraine with weapons. The Ukrainian armed forces are gaining unprecedented power. Ukraine has managed to break a Kremlin ally. Don't miss the details about the shocking changes on the world stage coming up next. Putin is going all in. Russia's attack on NATO. The red button. It's ready. Satellite images are shocking. Russian equipment is ready for an attack. The world is holding its breath. Disaster in Russia. Panic and fear have gripped the country. Ukrainian drones have driven the gas station country into a dark pit from which there is no way out. All this and more coming up in our program, Hotspot. Urgent, the liberation of Crimea has begun. The Ukrainian armed forces may enter the peninsula. The timer has started. The Kerch Bridge is under attack and could disappear from the map. Russian air defenses have been breached. This has never happened before. Where exactly will Ukraine direct its fiery fist? All the details coming up.
Ukraine may attack Crimea. This bold statement was made by Sky News analyst Michael Clark. And we're not talking about the usual strikes that the defense forces carry out almost every day, but about a large-scale one. According to Clark, Ukraine may carry out an airstrike or an amphibious landing against Russian positions in Crimea. And in his opinion, this will happen before winter.
Ukrainians love to deliver surprises. They know that this affects not only the Russians on the front line, but also the West's perception of how things are going in Ukraine.
The Sky News analyst also believes that given Ukraine's long-range strike capabilities, an attack on the Kerch Bridge cannot be ruled out.
You can effectively create a significant gap in the air defense shield, and then you will certainly want to put something crucial through it to achieve something even more strategically valuable.
Ukraine has attacked the Kerch Bridge 3 times. In 2022, a truck loaded with several dozen tons of explosives in TNT equivalent was used to strike the crossing. In 2023, the bridge was attacked by combat maritime drones, and in 2025, the Security Service of Ukraine blew up the Kerch Bridge underwater. Explosives were planted near the key supports, and while the analysts' predictions about a 4th attack seem encouraging, official Kyiv is not thrilled about it.
Of course, there's no need to write about this today. These are somewhat different stages of the war, and in general, there's no need to announce intentions in a war that has been going on for almost 4 years. Russia is still investing significant resources in countering Ukraine. We see everything they are doing. I will not comment on offensive operations. That's not entirely appropriate.
Experts and the military are also against such loud statements. There is indeed work being done regarding Crimea. Demilitarization is in full swing, but that's all you need to know.
This is a personal opinion of a private individual who has no
connection to the actual state of affairs. The only way to assess such a publication is it emphasizes that Crimea, the temporarily occupied Ukrainian peninsula, has not only remained on the agenda for our country's defense forces, but is now in such a stage, I wouldn't even call it active development, but rather an active phase of demilitarizing the temporarily occupied Crimea is currently underway. All these so-called analytical calculations and forecasts have nothing to do with the actual realities. The reality now is that the defense forces, in particular the main directorate of Ukraine, as you know, the Security Service of Ukraine, the naval forces of the armed forces of Ukraine, and other related structures are carrying out the necessary work.
This work consists of ongoing targeted operations to destroy Russian radar systems and installations, such as air defense, aircraft, and so on. Ukrainians can see all this almost every day. And this systematic destruction of Russian weaponry is not happening by chance, confirms the spokesperson for the Ukrainian Navy, Dmytro Pletenchuk. This is exactly where it all begins.
If you want to influence the enemy on their territory or on your own territory that the enemy has occupied, the first thing you need to do is eliminate all obstacles. This will allow you to gain air superiority, which in turn also means superiority on the ground. To achieve this, you need to eliminate enemy countermeasures, that is, destroy their air defenses. That is why this is a priority target, from which any other...
The critical action is now beginning. A complete and widespread blackout across all the defense forces, encompassing every unit and communication channel, is absolutely not needed at this crucial juncture. And this is a rule that Ukrainians have learned well over almost 4 years of full-scale war.
BL Jonasus lists notes of Russia. The Ukrainian armed forces delivered a devastating strike. The Russian Federation's energy system is bursting at the seams. The Kremlin is losing control. Power plants are burning one after another. Millions of Russians are left without electricity and heat. If the Kremlin does not accept Ukraine's terms, the empire may collapse completely.
8 closed airports, fires from Tuapse to Nizhny Novgorod, 251 drones over 16 regions. From October 5th to 6th, Russia faced the largest Ukrainian drone attack in the past 6 months. A strike was carried out on the power plant in Klintsy-Bryansk region. There, power outages began. And in Belgorod, there was a blackout. Part of the city was left without electricity for a long time. And this is not the first time.
And damn, the city just flickered. Good morning, dear friends. As a result of the overnight work by our energy workers and emergency services, as of today, there are still partial outages in 24 settlements. 5,400 residents.
On the eve of winter and the heating season, Russia, as usual, is striking at Ukrainian energy infrastructure. And now, for the first time in the 3.5 years of war, Kiev is not only threatening retaliatory strikes, but is actually carrying them out. I'll talk more about the damage.
If they threaten a blackout in the capital of Ukraine, then the Kremlin should know that there will be a blackout in the capital of Russia as well.
Any action by Russia aimed at harming Ukraine will provoke a symmetrical response. This also applies to the energy sector.
The president said it absolutely right. We will find both the means and the weapons, and we will carry out these operations. They will definitely realize that this way they will not gain any advantage. Any action by Russia will definitely be met with a counteraction. Andriy Inatov, Chief of the General Staff of the Armed Forces of Ukraine.
A blackout in Russian regions and even in Moscow is quite possible. There are several reasons for this, and there are several reasons for that. One of them is, of course, the strikes by the armed forces of Ukraine on the power system. And the second is the sanctions that are already in effect, and accordingly, the inability to purchase spare parts and equipment. And the existing ones are degrading and becoming unusable.
Russia's energy sector today is a powder keg. The capacity deficit has reached 25 gigawatts. This is not an isolated failure, but a systemic collapse. And this is even before any systematic strikes which Russia itself is bringing closer by its actions against our energy sector. Instead of investing in its own thermal and hydroelectric power plants, Moscow is losing reserves due to sanctions and aging equipment. Andrei Kovalenko, head of the Center for Defense Strategies.
If Ukraine starts systematically striking thermal and hydroelectric power plants across all regions of Russia, as happened in the Belgorod region on the night from Sunday to Monday, then it will be extremely difficult to restore Russia's energy sector. Currently, 42 regions of Russia are already introducing consumption restrictions during peak hours, including in the central part of the country. In Siberia and the Far East, there is an energy shortage everywhere. And that's without any capacities being knocked out yet. When the Russians destroy Ukraine's energy infrastructure, we have a safety net. We receive kilowatts from the EU, as well as spare parts for repairs. In turn, Russia does not have such support. Their energy workers can only rely on themselves. And as the latest strike by the Ukrainian armed forces showed, the coming winter in Russia will be very long, cold, and dark.
The Ukrainian armed forces are tearing the Russian fleet to pieces. New Ukrainian naval drones have a range of 5,000 kilometers. Putin's ships are no longer untouchable. The Ukrainian armed forces are rewriting maritime history. There is panic in the Kremlin. Ukrainian drones are turning the Black Sea into hell for the Russian Federation. Watch more about this in the following report.
The days of Russia's Black Sea fleet are numbered. There is less and less time left until the complete defeat of the occupiers. This week, Ukraine marks the 3rd anniversary of the first strike on the Crimean Bridge. On October 8, 2022, a powerful explosion rocked the crossing, seriously damaging the road surface and the railway line. It was then that Ukraine introduced an entirely new and unique branch of the military and its own advanced weapon, naval drones.
As a result of the incident, automobile traffic on the Crimean bridge was halted.
It was then that the whole world learned what Ukrainian naval drones are capable of.
Ukraine demonstrated that its naval drones, here they are, there's probably a picture of what they look like. These naval drones are an effective weapon.
Over the past 3 years, Ukrainian naval UAVs have become the masters of the Black Sea. Meanwhile, Putin's much vaunted Black Sea fleet is forced to hide from our drones in remote ports.
This is, in essence, a kind of army of the future. This is the element that will help save human lives and allow for more effective operations.
The effectiveness of modern Ukrainian naval weaponry is hard to dispute. Time and again, it manages to break through the enemy's defense system and make its way into Russian ports and bays.
Drones, both in the air and on the ground, are very visible. And they are targeted by automatic cannons as well. So in other words, they seem to be firing aimed shots, but really it's just by eye. And yet they can't hit it. And this is despite, once again, the excellent lighting. It's perfectly visible, it's moving relatively close by, and still they can't hit it. It's a total disaster.
And with each new attack on Russian warships, Ukrainian drones are becoming more and more advanced technologically.
Naturally, now they're going to strike at this entire chain simply because the Ukrainians have really committed to this. They're succeeding. They see that Russia's air defense system is failing everywhere, literally. So why not give it a try?
Now, Putin no longer has a single remote base in the Black Sea where the bunker dweller could hide his fleet from Ukrainian drones. As it has become known, Ukroboronprom has just signed a cooperation agreement with American partners, which gives Ukraine the opportunity to acquire an entirely new type of drone, Ikranoplans, with a range of almost 5,000 kilometers and a payload of 1 ton.
We have agreed to cooperate within the float and fly concept, and we also plan to jointly develop solutions to increase the speed and stability of our products. We are interested in developing production on the territory of Ukraine, as well as organizing training for our weapons specialists.
This news has caused yet another wave of panic in the Kremlin. Now every military vessel and all without exception Russian army bases on the Black Sea are in the crosshairs of the Ukrainian armed forces.
We can clearly see that both the sheer quantity and the improved quality of these drones now effectively allow Ukrainian forces to significantly vary their tactical use and thereby create a certain more sophisticated mix of different types of unmanned aerial vehicles in order to achieve their objectives.
And Ukrainian soldiers, more than anyone else, know how to achieve their goals by any means necessary. It's no coincidence that they are setting global trends in naval operations. Ukraine's naval drones have prompted other countries to adopt similar technologies. Today, our unmanned boats are the main participants in modern exercises conducted by Portugal. In full view of representatives from NATO naval forces, and with the involvement of dozens of defense and technology companies and their experimental weapons, a 3-week battle is being held for control over a notional 10,000 square miles of ocean. As a result of the prolonged battle at sea, Ukrainian drones demonstrated their highest level of effectiveness. Now, according to military experts, the experience gained by the Ukrainian armed forces will be scaled up in the Black Sea.
Ukraine has acquired, and this is now confirmed by all recent and significant events, an extremely effective weapon to counter Russia's naval monopoly, and in actual fact has completely undermined that monopoly.
If a year ago Ukrainian drones had effectively driven the Russian fleets out of Sevastopol, now they will find no peace even in Novorossiysk. The Kremlin is clearly unable to keep up with Ukraine's new maritime technologies. While Russian sailors are training to shoot at surface targets, for example, Magura drones are being equipped with machine guns, anti-aircraft, and anti-ship missiles. Some of them are even already performing the role of miniature aircraft carriers, serving as platforms for launching drones.
By invading, which is an act of military aggression where one country's armed forces enter another's territory without permission, often with the goal of occupying it or overthrowing its government.
Ukraine in 2014, Putin provoked a whole revolution in naval warfare. Over the past 3 years, Ukraine has completely rewritten the course of such battles, and Western experts are already comparing its contribution to the development of naval forces to technological breakthroughs of their time, such as the construction of submarines or even the advent of steam power replacing ship sails.
Every voice matters. Join our community, support independent journalism and help us bring you the truth from Ukraine. Become a member of Ukraine today. Join us now.
Slovakia has made its decision. Moscow is in panic. Fico has suddenly struck right at the heart of Putin. The world is in shock. A course set for full support of Kyiv. The Ukrainian armed forces are growing stronger before our eyes. Bratislava is flooding Ukraine with weapons. For the first time, details of the historic strike. Watch right now.
Our goal is to end the war as soon as possible so that Slavs stop killing each other. The war could have ended 3 months after it began.
He is known for his harsh anti-Ukrainian statements and openly pro-Russian rhetoric.
There are no moral, historical, or legal reasons why Slovakia should be drawn into the war.
Now Fico is trying to find a balance between veto and support.
He is still trying to take a more balanced position. At the same time, yes, you said it absolutely right. Ideally, you want to sit on several chairs at once. And as long as it's possible to delay giving up Russian resources, that's exactly how long they will delay.
A particular country that has repeatedly threatened not to vote for crucial EU financial aid packages for Ukraine is now, once again, acting as a reliable partner, precisely because it fully understands the immense value.
Slovakia will try to maintain a balance, considering that they are still continuing to buy and transit Russian energy resources, both for themselves and for others. They will consistently try to maintain this delicate balance. They will not transfer their military equipment or any significant weaponry to Ukraine, nor will they provide such substantial military aid packages. But at the very same time, the significant fact that Slovakia's position has already evolved to the crucial point where they themselves are indeed ready to make such a meaningful gesture of goodwill to clearly show that they are genuinely willing to help Ukraine, even with essential humanitarian aid and even in vital matters of demining, is actually already a very good and positive step forward.
Slovakia will provide Ukraine with equipment for demining and evacuation. This was announced by Prime Minister Denis Shmyhal. The package will include not only Bozena vehicles, the legendary armored tractors capable of clearing mines in just a few minutes, but also engineering and construction equipment, transport, demining systems, and medical evacuation means. During
the meeting, he thanked his Slovak colleague for the assistance that is saving the lives of Ukrainians. We feel Slovakia's support on our path toward achieving a just and lasting peace.
Slovak Defense Minister Robert Kaliňák confirmed that Slovakia is not stopping at what has already been achieved. Fico thought that Europe would be pleased and Moscow wouldn't be too offended.
Slovakia's policy, like that of Hungary, is rather situational. And depending on the set of circumstances that arise, decisions are made accordingly.
But despite this, the assistance is very important for Ukraine. Kaliňák noted that they are currently working on new joint projects between Ukrainian and Slovak companies, a significant increase in the production of artillery ammunition and indirect fire systems to strengthen defense cooperation with Ukraine.
We are open to investments in joint defense projects on both sides of the Slovak-Ukrainian border. That is why I included several representatives of the Slovak defense industry in my delegation.
Notably, the previous 13th package of military aid to Ukraine was provided back in February 2022. Bratislava has managed to object to allocating funds to Kyiv at least 3 times. First in October 23, then in January and March 25. Immediately after Slovak Prime Minister Robert Fico visited Moscow, he stated that Slovakia would not support Ukraine.
The Slovak Republic will not support Ukraine either financially or militarily to continue the war. If others choose to do so, we will respect that.
Each of these pauses played into the Kremlin's hands, while our defenders on the front lines were left without crucial support on the battlefield that could have helped preserve territory from the Moscow enemy. Fico explained this in different ways. Sometimes he said it was necessary to focus on internal problems, other times that the principles of support needed to be reconsidered. Fico's government also rejected a €40 million aid package, reducing military support to only humanitarian and non-lethal assistance. We
See that Slovakia is now actively and demonstrably trying, through the defense minister's official and high-profile visits to Ukraine, to send a clear and unequivocal political signal not only to the government in Kyiv, but also to the influential decision-makers and institutions in Brussels, thereby emphasizing its commitment and solidarity. Regarding the crucial fact that Slovakia is now prepared and indeed ready to actively pursue a more carefully considered and truly balanced policy approach, rather than, for instance, an overtly anti-Ukrainian stance or a distinctly anti-European position which would be detrimental to regional stability and cooperation.
Fico's wavering between European integration and a pro-Russian tilt will lead to no good.
We are currently seeing a classic and clear example of realpolitik now with Fico in Slovakia, and most likely this political approach will continue to be the main course for Slovakia's future direction.
The Slovaks have taken to the streets more than once because after 2 years they realized they do not agree with the pro-Russian policy of their prime minister, who does not hesitate to shake the hand of the Kremlin dictator who unleashed the war. However, the current aid package to Kyiv shows that the pragmatic Slavic brothers see that helping Kyiv today is more profitable and promising than helping Moscow.
Putin is preparing to attack NATO. Now, for sure, the Kremlin is tapping into its reserves for the attack. Russia is preparing something truly terrifying, but there are some nuances. Satellite images have shown the condition of Russian equipment in storage. The red button is ready. The world is on the brink of chaos. Russia is going all in. What will NATO do? Find out more in the following report.
From fakes to provocations, Moscow is up to its old tricks again. A factory of lies, provocations, and intimidation. Russia is accelerating the phase of information and psychological preparation, the so-called zero phase, in its campaign to prepare for a possible war with NATO.
Russia has entered the first phase of preparation, the zero phase, to move to a higher level of warfare than the one Russia is currently engaged in, for example, to a future NATO-Russia war. This is according to analysts from the Institute for the Study of War.
Since the fall of 2025, Muscovy has sharply intensified its operations. From the incursion of a drone into the airspace of an astronaut to false statements by the Foreign Intelligence Service about alleged planned attacks in Europe. The latest accusation is against the United Kingdom. Supposedly, London is planning attacks by pro-Ukrainian Russians on military and civilian vessels.
The statement by Russia's Foreign Intelligence Service on October 6th follows similar false statements by the SVR regarding European countries such as Poland, Moldova, and Serbia. And in recent weeks, the SVR has begun making such statements more frequently, indicating a new pattern of coordinated actions. This is according to analysts from the Institute for the Study of War.
These actions are not spontaneous. This is a carefully constructed strategy based on the experience of 2014 and 2022, when the Kremlin used disinformation as an artillery barrage before the full-scale invasion of Ukraine. Meanwhile, the alliance is stepping up its monitoring of Russian and proxy information operations, recording a surge in activity from trolls and fake networks. The most noticeable campaigns are in Poland, Germany, Slovakia, and the Baltic countries. It is precisely there that Moscow is trying to provoke war fatigue and distrust toward allied commitments. Under the guise of alternative opinions and anti-globalist movements, the Kremlin is building a network of loyal speakers, bloggers, and pseudo-experts. Their task is to implant the idea that NATO is supposedly provoking Russia, that the West is tired of Ukraine, and that a new war is inevitable. In addition, rumors about mobilization and threats of nuclear weapons use are being spread in Western countries. That
Putin is planning to go even further. He explicitly stated this back in December of 2021, that his ultimate goal is not just the entirety of Ukraine, but also the whole of Eastern Europe and even the vast Arctic region.
This rhetoric is not just propaganda, but a tool of pressure. Moscow is testing the resilience of Western societies, the level of fear, and their readiness to respond. The louder the threat is discussed, the less people believe in it, and the easier it will be to deliver a real blow, political, economic, or military.
Everything happening now is pressure on the European Union, on our European partners, to make President Zelensky give in, to make him agree to the peace terms proposed by the Russian Federation, 2 or 4 regions, and so on. All these drones on the territory of the European Union and so on, this is a provocation, that's absolutely true. But these are indeed concerted attempts to put significant pressure on various European countries, and more broadly on the entire European Union, so that they too would perhaps be a bit more accommodating, certainly more flexible, and ultimately more cooperative in their ongoing relations with the Russian Federation. After all, provocations from Russia have not stopped the flow of Russian gas, liquefied Russian gas, LNG, which is going to Belgium, the Netherlands, France, and Spain. None of these countries, as a rule, has declared, we are stopping the purchase of Russian gas, and this continues. That's why I don't believe in war.
For now, one thing is clear. The Kremlin is testing the waters, but no one knows what will happen tomorrow. These actions can easily turn into real strikes. And for now, this is an indirect attack. It's psychological preparation for it. Its goal is to destabilize the information space, to sow panic, distrust, and a sense of the inevitability of a new war. Right now, the future of the entire continent depends on the reaction of Western politicians.
For Russians, a car will become a luxury. Ukrainian drones are tearing Russia's fuel system to shreds. Gasoline is disappearing before their eyes. Fear and panic have gripped Russia. It's an apocalypse at the gas stations, kilometer-long lines and mass unrest in Russia. Watch all the latest fiery events next.
An absolute anti-record for Putin. Cars in Russia are ceasing to be a means of transportation and are turning into a luxury item. After all, it is becoming increasingly difficult for Russian residents to fuel their iron horses. Despite the Kremlin extracting an enormous amount of oil, the country is facing a shortage of gasoline and diesel fuel.
As ridiculous as it sounds, in a country that used to be a gas station, not only a raw materials appendage of China, an economy built on pipelines now can't even provide its own population and businesses with oil and petroleum products.
The main culprit behind the catastrophic fuel shortage across the border has been identified as the Ukrainian armed forces. Their precision strikes on the occupiers' oil refining infrastructure. Thus, by the end of September, refineries across Russia were idling at least 38% of their primary oil processing capacity. That's 338,000 tons per day. For a former gas station country, this is a colossal market collapse. Recently, the fuel shortage has even been acutely felt at the front lines. At regular Russian gas stations, you can't find 95-octane fuel in most regions, even if you search high and low.
In some cases, certain gas stations have started temporarily limiting the amount of fuel sold to each customer. So somewhere they're allowing up to 20 liters, somewhere else 30 liters per purchase. And at other gas stations in some regions of Russia, the sale of certain types of fuel was temporarily suspended altogether. That is, in some places there was no 92-octane gasoline available, in others there was no 95-octane, and so on. At the same time, at small independent private gas stations that are not part of the so-called vertically integrated oil companies, there was a sharp increase in fuel prices.
The recent situation in the country has only made things worse. Along with the shortage, gas stations were hit by sky-high prices. This summer, the price of gasoline and diesel in Russia increased by a solid 15 to 20%. And starting from autumn, the prices displayed on gas station signs across the border have been changing almost daily, each time adding another ruble or so to the cost of fuel. But even such an increase is not enough to cover the costs of Russian oil refineries, which are now constantly under attack from Ukrainian drones.
The scale of the shortage is such that this is a desperate attempt by hitting the oil companies in their wallets amid ongoing disasters, with profits collapsing and many companies becoming unprofitable, to somehow supply the domestic market.
Things are even worse for Russian oil traders on foreign markets than they are domestically. If previously the government compensated for the price difference through exports, today Russian oil isn't being bought in Europe even for pennies. This means that cheap gasoline within Russia itself is no longer something to expect.
There are major problems with fuel, and the crisis will only get worse. Accordingly, oil companies can't make money on foreign markets because of limited sales opportunities and falling oil prices. Right now, Russian oil is trading at $55 to $57 per barrel, taking into account all the discounts and markdowns. And that's it. It turns out that now the oil companies, having run out of options, are asking the government for help in the form of lower taxes, reduced mineral extraction tax rates, export duties and excises, but the authorities can't do this. They have budget constraints, they have budget deficits.
How can the Russian economy patch this hole? There's nothing to do it with. As a result, the Kremlin couldn't come up with anything better than to announce the start of fuel imports into the country while simultaneously halting all exports of gasoline and diesel from Russia.
So basically, they've decided to import gasoline. Remember how Putin used to boast that Russia would never be a gas station country? I think this is a real victory. It should be celebrated. Now Russia is going to buy gasoline. How can you not recall Churchill, who said that when the Soviet Union starts buying wheat, that's when it will come to an end? Well, in much the same way, when Putin's Russia starts buying gasoline, after a while it will come to an end, just like the Soviet Union once did.
The Ukrainian authorities have also actively set out to help bring Russia to an end. Alongside drone attacks on oil refineries, Kiev is striking painful blows to Putin's economy on the diplomatic front as well.
If Ukraine synchronizes its strategy to reduce Russia's resource base together with its allies, with Europe, with America, with Japan, and so on, then sanctions will be imposed very quickly, and even South Korea and Singapore will simply be afraid to supply gasoline to Russia for fear of falling under sanctions.
In such a hopeless situation, the Kremlin is grasping at the last straw, disregarding all environmental standards. The government has practically legalized counterfeit products, hoping that at least this will saturate the Russian gasoline market. However, analysts assert that such a decision, on the contrary, will drive the final nail into the coffin, not only of oil refining in Russia, but beyond that as well.
The authorities have decided to tackle the gasoline shortage with methods that cause suffocation and damage car engines. Deputy Prime Minister Novak has proposed bringing back for 6 months a special gasoline additive that was banned back in 2016. They want to use it to increase gasoline production, but there's a catch. This additive has a negative impact on the environment, damages cars, and increases the concentration of nitrogen oxide in exhaust fumes, which settles in the air about 60 centimeters above the ground. Breathing in these vapors is dangerous for people. Among the symptoms of poisoning are delayed reactions, suffocation, and bluish discoloration of the hands and ears.
And such a surrogate with toxic additives can instantly turn an engine into a pile of scrap metal. After just 6 months of driving on this kind of fuel, a car will become unusable, just like all of Russia's public transport. Then without proper gasoline and diesel, the entire multi-million population of the country will be forced to go back to good old horse-drawn carts.
That's all for now. And for more hot news from the front, tune in to our next episode.